Admiral Cathra stood on the command deck of his flagship and stared at the star map the holographic display showed. 3,000 star systems belonging to the Valorian hegemony, billions of citizens, thousands of warships, an empire that had conquered and absorbed dozens of species over 10,000 years, but there was a hole in the map, a dark spot roughly 40 light-years across. No signals came from that region, no trade ships, no communication of any kind. Just silence. For 200 years the hegemony had wondered about that silence. They had sent 17 expeditions to investigate, probe ships, scout vessels, armed frigates, even a small battle group. Once, none of them ever came back. Hegemony clears throat, called it the dead zone. Some believed it was a natural phenomenon, a region of space where something killed all technology. Others thought it was home to some ancient and terrible weapon left over from a forgotten war. Admiral Keith Rabba believed neither theory. He had spent 40 years in the hegemony navy. He had fought pirates and rebels and hostile aliens. He knew that when ships disappeared, there was always a reason, and that reason usually had a face. Admiral, his second-in-command, said, "The fleet is ready." Cathra turned from the map. His flagship, the Eternal Victory, was the most powerful warship in the hegemony. Behind it waited 11 more vessels, cruiser, destroyer, the science ship packed with the best sensors and analysts the Empire could provide. This was no ordinary expedition. This was a statement. The hegemony was done sending small groups to vanish in the dark. They were sending a fleet strong enough to handle any threat. Take us in, the admiral said. The fleet moved forward, stars blurred as they engaged. They're faster than light drives. Boundary of the dead zone approached on their sensors. It was not a physical barrier, just an invisible line that marked where the silence began. They crossed it. Nothing happened at first. The ships continued forward. Sensors swept the space ahead. For several minutes everything seemed normal. Then the science ship reported something strange. "Admiral, we are detecting structures ahead, many structures." Cathra frowned. "What kind of structures?" "Ship stations, orbital platforms, thousands of them." The admiral felt his scales tighten against his skull. That was impossible. The dead zone was supposed to be empty. Every probe had shown nothing but vacant space. Before going silent, "Show me," he commanded. The main display shifted. What it showed made every officer on the bridge stop breathing. The space ahead was not empty. It was crowded. Ships moved between massive space stations. Orbital rings surrounded planets. Mining operations worked through asteroid fields. Cities of light glowed on the dark sides of worlds. This was not a dead zone. This was a thriving civilization. "Why did we never detect this?" Cathra demanded. The chief science officer worked frantically at her console. "They are not broadcasting anything outward. All their communications are tightly focused. Internal beams only. Nothing leaks past their borders from outside. This region would appear completely empty." The admiral understood immediately. This was not an accident. This was deliberate. Someone had built an entire civilization and hidden it from the rest of the galaxy. They had let the hegemony believe this space was dead while they grew strong in secret. "Who are they?" he asked, checking our records now. The science officer paused. "The star systems in this region were surveyed long ago. They were marked as having only one species with space travel potential, a primitive race on a small planet they called themselves humans. Kithava had heard the name somewhere before, a minor species. Unimportant. The hegemony had noted their existence and moved on to more interesting targets. That had been 300 years ago. It seems they were not as primitive as we thought, the Admiral said slowly. Before anyone could respond, a new contact appeared on sensors, a single ship small, perhaps a tenth the size of the smallest hegemony destroyer. It came from nowhere. One moment the space was empty, the next moment the ship was simply there. Where did that come from? Kathrova demanded. Uncount. It did not approach on any normal vector, it just appeared. The small ship stopped directly in front of the hegemony fleet. It made no aggressive moves, it simply waited. Then a voice spoke through the communication system. It spoke in perfect Valoran. Every word clear, every pronunciation exact. Attention, foreign vessels, you have entered sovereign human territory. State your intentions or reverse course. Immediately, you will not receive a second warning. The bridge fell silent. Keith studied the tiny ship on his display. It showed no weapons, no shields, nothing that could threaten even his smallest escort. But it had appeared from nowhere, and it spoke his language perfectly, and somewhere behind it waited thousands of ships and stations that his empire had never detected. This is Admiral Keitha of the Valoran hegemony, he responded. We are here seeking answers. 17 of our expeditions have entered this region. Over the past 2 centuries, none have returned. We demand to know what happened to them. The human ship did not respond immediately. Seconds passed. Then a full minute. Your expeditions were warned as you have been warned. They chose to continue forward. That choice had consequences. If you wish to avoid those consequences, leave now. This is not a negotiation. Kathraba felt anger rising in his chest. He was an admiral of the hegemony. His fleet could glass planets. His empire had crushed species far more impressive than these hidden humans. I do not accept threats from a single ship, he said coldly. You will provide answers or we will take them. Another long pause. Understood. Your choice has been recorded. The human ship vanished. It did not fly away. It did not jump to faster than light speed. It simply stopped existing in one location and was gone. Kathrava stared at the empty space where it had been. Find that ship, he ordered. We cannot, Admiral. There is no trail, no energy signature. It is as if it was never there. The Admiral forced himself to remain calm. Strain. Technology did not mean superior power. The hegemony had encountered advanced species before. They had always found ways to defeat them. Continue forward, he commanded. Full sensor sweep battle formations. We will get our answers. Fleet moved deeper into human space. Hours passed. They detected more signs of civilization, colonies, shipyards, industrial stations, but no human ships approached them. The space around them remained empty. Night cycle came. The crew rotated through rest periods while the ships continued their slow advance. Keitha retired to his quarters but could not sleep. Something about this situation felt wrong. An enemy that hid rather than fought. A civilization that grew in secret for 3 centuries. These were not the actions of a weak species. These were the actions of a patient one. An alarm pulled him from his troubled thoughts. He rushed to the command deck. Report, he demanded. His second-in-command looked pale. Admiral, we have lost contact with 3 ships. The crushing blow, the imperial fist, the divine wrath, lost contact. What do you mean they are gone, Admiral? 20 minutes ago, they were in formation with the rest of the fleet. Now they are simply not there. No distress signals. No weapons fire detected. No clear's throat explosion. They just vanished. Keitha looked at the tactical display where 12 ships had been. Now there were 9. 3 positions showed nothing. Not debris, not escape pods. Nothing at all. That is not possible, he whispered. We have reviewed all sensor data. There is no record of anything approaching those ships. No record of any attack. One moment they existed, the next moment they did not. The Admiral thought of the human ship that had appeared and disappeared without explanation. He thought of the 17 expeditions that had never returned. He thought of the warning he had been given. Your choice has been recorded for the first time in his long career, Admiral. Keith Rava felt the cold touch of fear. He had brought his fleet into this space expecting to find answers. Instead, he had found something far worse. He had found a species that could make warships vanish without a trace. A species that had watched the galaxy for 300 years, while the galaxy thought they were primitive and weak. A species that did not threaten or boast or demand surrender. They simply acted quietly, invisibly, completely. And now his fleet was 9 ships instead of 12. His crews were frightened. His sensors showed him nothing useful. Keitha stood on his command deck and stared into the darkness of human space. Somewhere out there, something was watching, waiting, choosing when and how to strike next. He had wanted answers about what happened to the missing expeditions. Now he was beginning to understand, and that understanding filled him with dread. All ships maintain formation, he ordered. Double the watch. Report any anomaly. No matter how small. His officers rushed to obey. But Keitha knew in his heart that it would not matter. Whatever was hunting them did not care about watches or formations. It took what it wanted when it wanted, and the night was very long. The morning cycle brought no relief. Admiral Cathra had not slept. He had spent the dark hours watching sensor displays and waiting for more of his ships to vanish. None did, but the silence was somehow worse than another attack. The fleet continued forward. They had no choice now. Turning back meant admitting defeat. The hegemony did not accept defeat. They had ruled this region of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had broken empires and enslaved species and burned worlds that refused to submit. They would not run from shadows. Admiral, the science officer called. We are approaching a human colony world. Cathaba moved to study the display. The planet ahead was a gas giant, massive, beautiful, swirling with storms of orange and gold. But it was not the planet that drew his attention. It was what floated in its atmosphere. Cities, dozens of them, vast platforms that drifted through the upper clouds like ships sailing an ocean of gas. Each one was home to millions of humans. Each one glowed with lights and activity and life. How is that possible? One of his officers whispered. The science officer shook her head. Engineering required is beyond anything in our records. The gravitational forces alone should crush any structure. Yet these cities are stable. They have been there for what appears to be many decades. Keitha said nothing. He watched the floating cities drift through alien clouds and felt something he had not experienced in years. Uncertainty. The hegemony was advanced. They had conquered the stars. They had technologies that seemed like magic to lesser species, but they could not build cities in the atmosphere of a gas giant. They could not make ships appear and disappear without a trace. They could not hide an entire civilization from the rest of the galaxy for 3 centuries. These humans had done all of these things. Continue observation, he ordered. Do not approach the planet. For hours the fleet watched. They recorded everything, ships moving between the floating cities, smaller vessels diving into the deeper atmosphere and returning with cargo, strange energy signatures that their sensors could not identify. Then they saw something that made every officer freeze. A human ship emerged from the clouds. It was enormous, larger than anything in the hegemony fleet, larger than any ship Kathra had ever seen. It rose slowly, majestically, and it hung in orbit above the gas giant. It did not acknowledge the hegemony fleet. It simply turned and accelerated away, vanishing into the depth of space. Within seconds, how fast was that vessel moving? Kathaba asked quietly. The science officer checked her readings 3 times before answering. Approximately 40 times faster than our maximum velocity, Admiral. 40 times faster. The hegemon ships were among the fastest in known space, and these humans move 40 times faster without any visible effort. Kathrava sat down heavily in his command chair. He was beginning to understand something terrible. Hegemony had not come here as conquerors. They had come as specimens, interesting creatures to be studied and catalogued by a species so far beyond them that the comparison was almost meaningless. Admiral, the communication officer said, "We are receiving a transmission, audio only, human origin." "Let me hear it." A voice filled the bridge. It was female calm speaking. "Perfect once again, Admiral Kathrava. My name is Ambassador Chen. On behalf of the United Human Territories, I would like to meet with you. I believe you have questions. I am prepared to answer them. Will you receive me aboard your vessel?" The Admiral considered. This could be a trap, a way to get an agent aboard his flagship, but what did it matter if the humans wanted to destroy his fleet? They clearly had the power to do so whenever they chose. 3 ships had already vanished. The rest could follow at any moment. "We will receive you," he replied. 1 hour, Shuttle Bay 3. "I will come alone," Ambassador Chen said. "And Admiral, I suggest you order your remaining ships to stand down from combat readiness. Weapons will not help you here, but they might cause unfortunate misunderstandings." The transmission ended. Kathra looked at his tactical display. His ships were indeed at full combat readiness, weapons charged, shields raised, every system prepared for battle. He thought about the vessel that had moved 40 times faster than his fastest ship. He thought about the cities floating in the atmosphere of a gas giant. He thought about his 3 vanished warships. All ships stand down from combat status. He ordered, maintain defensive shields. Only his officers obeyed without question. They had seen the same things he had seen. They understood. 1 hour later, a small human shuttle entered the bay. It was simple, almost primitive appearance. No weapons, no obvious technology, but Keitha noticed that his sensors could not penetrate its hull. Whatever that little shuttle was made of, it was invisible to every scanning method the hegemony possessed. The shuttle door opened. A single human stepped out. Ambassador Chen was old by human standards. Her hair was gray, her face was lined with age. She walked with the careful steps of someone whose body had grown tired over many years, but her eyes were sharp, clear. They studied the admiral and his guards with calm intelligence. "Thank you for receiving me," she said. Her voice was the same as on the transmission, quiet but confident. Kathraba led her to a conference room. He dismissed his guards. Despite their objections, whatever happened next, it would not be decided by weapons. "You said you would answer questions," the admiral began. "Start with the most important one. What happened to my 3 ships?" Chen sat down across from him. Her movements were slow, deliberate. "They are safe. Their crews are unharmed. We disabled their vessels and transported everyone to a secure location. They are being well treated. You captured 3 hegemony warships without firing a single shot." "Yes." Hao Chen smiled slightly. "That is not really the question you want," answered Admiral. "The question you want answered is why. Why did we take them? Why did we let the rest of your fleet continue? Why are we talking instead of fighting?" Keitha felt his scales shift with discomfort. She was right. Those were the real questions. "Then answer them," he said. "Humanity discovered faster than light travel 312 years ago. We were excited. The galaxy was open to us. We built our first exploration ships and sent them out to make contact with other species." She paused. Her expression grew heavy. "They found the hegemony and the Cathian Empire and the Zorath Collective and a dozen other powers. Do you know what all of those civilizations had in common, Admiral?" Keitha said nothing. He could guess. They were predators, every single one. They conquered, they consumed, they destroyed anything weaker than themselves. Our exploration ships were captured, our crews were killed or enslaved. The few who escaped brought back a simple message: the galaxy is full of hunters and we are prey. Chen leaned forward. "So humanity made a choice. We would not announce ourselves. We would not trade or negotiate or try to find allies among the hunters. We would go silent, we would hide, and we would grow strong in the darkness while the rest of the galaxy forgot we existed." 300 years of hiding, Kathrova said slowly. 300 years of building, yes. We developed technologies your empire has never imagined. We expanded to hundreds of worlds. We created defenses that no fleet can penetrate, and we watched you conquer and enslave and destroy. We watched your expeditions enter our space looking for new territories to claim, and you stopped them. We stopped them. Every ship that entered our territory received the same warning. You received, leave peacefully or face consequences. Most chose to continue forward. They expected to find primitive aliens who would fall before their superior firepower. Chen's eyes met his directly. They found us instead. We disabled their ships. We captured their crews. We gave each individual a choice: return home with no memory of what you found or stay with us forever. Some chose to forget, others chose to stay. None were harmed either way. Kathrova struggled to process this information. The missing expeditions were not dead. They were living in human space. Prisoners by choice, Why not simply destroy us? He asked. You clearly have the power, because we remember what we were. Chen said quietly. Humanity was once a species of hunters too. We killed each other for thousands of years. We built weapons that could burn our entire world. We came so close to extinction that we lost count of how many times we nearly ended ourselves. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars drifted slowly past. We learned, Admiral, we learned that conquest brings only more war. We learned that empires built on blood eventually drown in it. We learned that the only sustainable path forward is one of restraint. So we do not kill unless we absolutely must. We do not conquer at all. We simply protect what is ours and wait for others to learn what we learn. And if we never learn, Chen turned back to face him, then you will eventually destroy yourselves, all hunter species. We have watched it happen many times. We will not force evolution on anyone, but we will not let your violence touch our people either. The Admiral sat in silence for a long moment. He had come to this space expecting a battle. Instead, he had found a lesson, but the lesson was not over yet. There is something else you should know, Chen said. Your empire has detected that your fleet survived crossing into our space. They are assembling a response, a war fleet of 2,000 ships. Kathaba felt his blood chill. 2,000 ships. They mean to invade. Yes, they believe we are weak because we prefer peace. They will learn otherwise, but before that happens, you must make a choice. She approached him. Her old eyes held something that might have been compassion. You can return to your people with your memories erased. You will remember nothing of what you have seen, or you can stay here, witness what comes next, perhaps serve as a bridge between our peoples when the fighting is over, and my crew's the same choice. Each individual decides for themselves. The Admiral thought of everything he had seen, the floating cities, the impossible ships, the power that made warships vanish without a trace. He thought of the fleet coming to invade. 2,000 ships crewed by his people sailing towards something they could not possibly understand, and he made his choice. I will stay, he said. I will witness, and if your people are willing, I will try to help when the time comes. Ambassador Chen nodded slowly. Then welcome to human space. Admiral, I suspect the next few days will change everything you believe about the galaxy. She was right about that. She was very right indeed. 3 days passed. Admiral Keitha remained aboard his flagship, but everything had changed. Human technicians had come aboard and done something to his sensors. Now he could see what had always been hidden. Human space was not just populated, it was crowded. Ships moved in every direction. Stations orbited every planet. The empty darkness he had always seen from outside the border was an illusion created by technology so advanced that the hegemony had never even suspected it existed. His crew had been given the same choice he received. Most chose to stay and witness what came next. A few asked to have their memories erased and return home. The humans honored both choices without judgment. Those who stayed were treated as guests, not prisoners. They were given access to human broadcasts and educational materials. They learned about human history, about the wars and horrors that had shaped the species, about the long climb from savagery to something better. Cathra spent hours studying these Records, he watched humans kill each other with primitive weapons. He watched them build empires and tear them down. He watched them create weapons that could destroy their entire world and then somehow choose not to use them. Humans called this their great filter. The moment when a species either learned to control its violent nature or destroyed itself. Most species in the galaxy had never faced this test. They had developed space travel before, developing weapons of total destruction. They carried their hunter instincts to the stars without ever confronting the consequences. Humanity had been forced to confront those consequences. They had stood at the edge of extinction and looked into the abyss, and they had stepped back. That was what made them different, not their technology, not their ships, their choice. Ambassador Chen visited the Admiral regularly. She answered his questions with patience. She seemed genuinely interested in helping him understand. Your war fleet will arrive in 2 days, she told him on the third evening. 1947 ships, the largest military force your people have assembled in 3 centuries. Cathaba felt sick. He knew what was coming. He had seen the human ships. He had watched them move and vanish and reappear. The hegemony fleet was sailing toward its own destruction. Can it be stopped? He asked. Can we communicate with them? Warn them? Chen shook her head. We have tried. They believe our warnings, our tricks. They believe we are weak and afraid. Their commander has publicly stated that he will burn every human world to ash and enslave any survivors. Supreme Admiral Vector, Cather said quietly. He is known for his brutality. He conquered the Methian people. He ordered the destruction of their home world when they refused to submit. We know. We have studied all of your military leaders. We know exactly what they are capable of, and yet you do not strike first. You wait for them to come to you. Chen smiled sadly. That is who we are, Admiral. We do not start wars. We end them, but only when we must. 2 days later, the Hegemony Grand Fleet arrived at the border of human space. Cathra watched from a human observation station that floated in the darkness between stars. The station was invisible to Hegemon sensors. He could see everything while remaining completely hidden. The fleet was magnificent. Nearly 2,000 warships arranged perfect formation, battleships and cruisers and destroyers, carrier vessels loaded with fighters, support ships carrying supplies for a long campaign. Supreme Admiral Vector commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest warship in the Hegemony, a vessel designed to inspire terror in anyone who saw it. Keith Rabba had served under Veher once. He knew the Admiral's reputation. Brilliant tactician, absolute ruthlessness, complete belief in the superiority of the hegemony over all other species. Vector would not listen to warnings. He would not accept anything but total victory. The human response was a single station at the border. It was small, perhaps a kilometer across. Unarmed by appearance, it broadcast a message on all frequencies. Attention, Hegemony Fleet. This is your only warning. Reverse course. What follows is not war, it is education. Vector's response came immediately. His voice dripped with contempt. This is Supreme Admiral Vector of the Valorian Hegemony Grand Fleet. We do not accept warnings from inferior species. We do not negotiate with prey. Surrender your worlds immediately or be destroyed. The station did not respond. Vector gave the order to advance. 2,000. Ships crossed the border into human space. Their weapons were charged. Their crews were eager. They expected easy conquest. They expected to add another species to the long list of those that hegemony had broken. They found something else entirely. Human ships began to appear. They emerged from folded space in numbers that defied comprehension. First thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Cathra watched the tactical display and felt his mind struggling to process what he saw. The human fleet was not just larger than the hegemony force. It was larger than anything he had ever imagined possible. Ships the size of small moons moved into position. Vessels that glowed with energy fields his sensors could not identify. Swarms of smaller craft that moved in perfect coordination like a single vast organism. Vector's fleet stopped advancing. Even his arrogance could not ignore what faced him. All ships open fire, he commanded. The hegemony fleet unleashed everything it had: plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy lances designed to cut through the strongest armor. Thousands of weapons firing at once, enough firepower to crack a planet. The human ships did not evade. They did not raise shields. They simply waited. The weapons struck. Energy splashed against human hulls and dissipated harmlessly. Missiles exploded without leaving marks. The most powerful attacks the hegemony could deliver had no effect at all. Then the humans responded. Keitha had expected destruction. He had expected to watch his former comrades die in flames. Instead, he saw something stranger. Waves of energy swept through the hegemony fleet. They passed through shields as if they did not exist. They touched every ship, every system, every piece of technology, and everything stopped working. Weapons went dead. Engines failed. Life support continued. But nothing else. 2,000 warships became 2,000 metal boxes drifting helplessly in space. The entire battle lasted 11 minutes. Not a single shot was fired by the human side. Not a single hegemony crew member was killed, but the fleet was finished completely and utterly, neutralized without a single death. Cathra stared at the display. His heart pounded. His scales had gone pale with shock. How, he whispered. Ambassador Chen stood beside him. Her expression showed no satisfaction, no triumph, only a deep weariness. Our weapons do not destroy, she said. They disable, they neutralize. They remove the ability to harm, while preserving the ability to live. We could have killed everyone in that fleet with a single command. Instead, we chose to let them survive. Why? Because dead enemies teach nothing. Your supreme admiral is alive. His crews are alive. They have just experienced something that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. They came to conquer and enslave. They found themselves as helpless as infants. She turned to face him directly. That is the education we promised. That is what we do to those who come to us with violence. We show them how small they really are, and then we give them a chance to become something better. On the displays, human ships approached the disabled fleet. Small vessels, diplomatic craft. They moved among the helpless warships like shepherds among frightened animals. Human voice broadcast on all frequencies. Attention, hegemony personnel, your fleet has been neutralized. You are not in danger. Medical assistance is available if needed. A representative will board each Vessel to explain what happens next. Please remain calm, Keitha thought about. Vector, the Supreme Admiral who had burned worlds and enslaved millions. The monster who had never known defeat. Right now, Vector was sitting in a dead ship surrounded by darkness completely. At the mercy of the species he had called prey, he wondered if Vector was learning anything from this experience. He wondered if any of them would learn. What happens now? He asked Chin. Now. We talk, she said. We explain who we are and what we want. We offer them choices. Some will listen, some will not, but the conversation has to happen. And if they refuse to listen, if they come back with more ships, Chen's expression grew heavy, then we will neutralize those ships too, and the ones after that, and the ones after that we have been building for 3 centuries, Admiral. We can do this forever if we must. She looked out at the field of disabled warships, but we hope we will not have to. We hope that somewhere in your empire, someone will understand, someone will see that there is a better path than endless conquest. Someone will choose peace. She glanced at him. Someone like you, perhaps. Katha said nothing. He watched the human diplomatic ships move among his people's fleet. He thought about everything he had learned in the past few days, and he began to understand what his role might be in whatever came next. The human diplomatic vessel approached the Eternal Dominion slowly. It was a small ship, elegant in design, no visible weapons. It looked almost fragile compared to the massive hegemony flagship, but the Eternal Dominion was dark. Its weapons were dead. Its engines were silent. 200,000 crew members sat in emergency lighting, breathing recycled air, waiting to learn their fate. Admiral Kathrava was aboard the diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Chen had asked him to come to serve as a bridge between human and Valoran to help explain what had happened and why. He had agreed. What else could he do? They docked with the flagship through an emergency airlock. The corridors beyond were dark except for dim emergency strips along the floor. Crew members stared at them as they passed. Their eyes held fear and confusion and anger. Supreme Admiral Vector waited in the main conference room. He was surrounded by his senior officers. All of them stood in rigid military posture despite the circumstances. Vector was tall even by Valoran standards. His scales were marked with the scars of many battles. His eyes burned with fury as the humans and Kathra entered. Traitor, he hissed. When he saw Kathra, I should have known. You were always weak, Keitha said. Nothing, there was nothing to say. He had made his choice. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. She showed no fear, despite being surrounded by hostile aliens in the heart of their most powerful warship. Supreme Admiral Vector, my name is Ambassador Chen. I represent the United Human Territories. I am here to discuss what happens next. Vector laughed. It was a harsh sound, full of contempt. What happens next is simple. You will restore power to my ships. You will surrender your worlds. And if you are very cooperative, I might let some of your species survive as slaves. Chen's expression did not change. That is not going to happen. You dare threaten me? I have destroyed entire civilizations. I have burned worlds that defied me. You are nothing. Your species is nothing, and yet your fleet is dead in space. Your weapons do not work. Your engines are silent. You are breathing because we choose to let you breathe. Chen spoke calmly, almost gently. The time for threats is over. Admiral, It ended 11 minutes ago when we demonstrated exactly how powerless you are against us. Vector's scales flushed. Dark with rage, his officers shifted. Nervously, some of them were beginning to understand the situation, even if their leader refused to accept it. What do you want? One of the officers asked. Chen turned to address him. We want peace. We have always wanted peace. Your empire has spent 10,000 years conquering and enslaving other species. We have spent 300 years hoping you would stop. You did not stop, so now we must have a different conversation. She gestured and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a map of hegemony space, 3,000 star systems, billions of citizens, thousands of worlds. Your empire is built on violence. You take what you want by force. You enslave those who resist. You destroy those who fight back. This system has worked for you for a very long time. The display shifted now. How? It showed human space, hundreds of star systems, massive fleet formations, industrial capacity that dwarf the hegemony by orders of magnitude. But it will not work anymore. We are stronger than you. We are more advanced than you. We could destroy your entire civilization in a matter of weeks if we chose to. Every world, every station, every ship. We could end the hegemony. And there is nothing you could do to stop us. Vector said nothing. His fury had faded into something else, something that might have been the beginning of fear. We will not do that, Chen continued. We do not want to rule you. We do not want to enslave you. We do not even want to punish you for the suffering you have caused other species over the millennia. Then what do you want? Vector demanded. We want you to change. The room fell silent. The hegemony officers looked at each other in confusion. Chen explained. Your empire has subject species, races. You conquered and enslaved. We want them freed. Your military exists to conquer new territories. We want that expansion to stop. Your economy depends on resources taken by force. We want fair trade instead. You ask us to destroy ourselves, Vector said. No, we ask you to become something better, something sustainable. Your current path leads only to endless war and eventual destruction. We are offering you a different path. And if we refuse, then we will send your fleet home. We will restore power to your ships and let you return to your space, but we will seal the border. No hegemony vessel will ever enter human space again, and we will begin supporting the species you have enslaved. We will give them weapons and technology and training. Your subject peoples will rise up. Your empire will burn from within. Chen paused to let this sink in. You can change willingly, or you can be forced to change by the consequences of your own brutality. The choice is yours. But you will change. That is not negotiable. One of Vector's officers spoke up. How do we know you will keep your word? You could destroy us the moment we lower our guard. You do not. No, Chen admitted. Trust must be built over time, but consider this. We have had the power to destroy you for 2 centuries. We have known about your empire since we first entered space. If we wanted you dead, you would already be dead. She looked at each of them in turn. We stayed our hand because we hoped you would evolve on your own. You did not, so now we must have this conversation instead. But our goal has never been your destruction, only your transformation. Katha stepped forward. He had been silent until now, but he felt the need to speak. I have spent a weak in human space, and he said, I have seen their cities and their ships. I have studied their history. They are telling the truth. They could have crushed our fleet without a thought. Instead, they neutralized us without killing a single crew member. He faced Vector directly. I have served the hegemony my entire life. I believed in our destiny to rule the galaxy, but I was wrong. We are not rulers. We are bullies. We prey on the weak because we have never faced anyone strong enough to stop us. He gestured at the darkness around them. Now we have a choice. We can keep fighting until they destroy us, or we can learn from them. We can become something more than what we have been. Vector stared at him with hatred. You would betray your own people. I would save them. The hegemony will not survive another century on its current path. Our subject species grow restless. Our resources grow thin. Our military grows tired. We are an empire in decline, pretending to be at our peak. Keitha turned to Chen. What exactly are you proposing? Over the next several hours they talked. Chen laid out a detailed plan for transformation. The hegemony would grant independence to its subject species over a period of 20 years. Military forces would be reduced to defensive levels only. Trade agreements would replace forced tribute. A council of species would be created to resolve disputes peacefully. In exchange, humanity would share technology, medical advances that could extend lifespans, agricultural methods that could feed billions, clean energy sources that could power civilizations without destroying environments. It was not conquest, it was partnership, but it required the hegemony to admit that their way had been wrong. Vector resisted. He argued and threatened, enraged, but his officers were listening. Some of them were beginning to see possibilities instead of defeat. When the discussion finally ended, no agreement had been reached, but seeds had been planted. Chen rose to leave. Think about what we have discussed. Talk among yourselves. We will restore basic power to your ships so you can communicate with your government. In 1 week we will meet again. She paused at the door. Your civilization stands at a crossroads, Supreme Admiral. One path leads to slow decay and eventual destruction. The other leads somewhere new, somewhere better. The choice is yours. The humans departed. Keitha remained behind for a moment. Whatever you think of me, he told Vector, consider the facts. We came here with 12 ships and lost 3 without ever seeing our enemy. They neutralized 2,000 ships in 11 minutes without a single death. This is not a war we can win. It is not even a war we can fight. He walked toward the airlock. They are offering us a future. It may not be the future we wanted, but it is better than the one we face if we refuse. He left Vector standing in the darkness of his powerless flagship. The Supreme Admiral had come to conquer an empire. Instead, he had discovered how small his empire really was. Whether he would learn from that discovery remained to be seen. 3 years had passed since the day the hegemony Grand Fleet sailed home in defeat. Admiral Keith Rava stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Valoria Prime. The view had not changed much. The same towers reached toward the sky. The same transport ships moved through the air. The same crowds filled the streets below, but everything else had changed. The hegemony had accepted humanity's terms, not immediately, not easily. There had been months of debate, In argument in political chaos, Vector had returned home demanding another invasion fleet. He had called for total war against the humans regardless of the cost. The government had listened to his report. They had studied the sensor data. From the battle, they had seen 2,000 ships neutralized in 11 minutes without a single human casualty, and they had chosen a different path. Vector was retired from military service. Some called it a disgrace, others called it wisdom. The supreme admiral who had burned worlds and enslaved millions spent his final years in quiet isolation, unable to accept a galaxy where his kind of power no longer mattered. The hegemony began the slow process of transformation. It was painful, difficult. Many citizens resisted. They had been raised to believe in their own superiority. The idea that they should treat other species as equals was offensive to everything they knew. But the changes came anyway. Subject species were granted independence one by one. Military forces were reduced and restructured. Trade agreements replaced forced tribute, and something unexpected happened. The hegemony became stronger. Free species made better trading partners than enslaved ones. Voluntary cooperation produced better results than forced labor. Innovation flourished when people were allowed to think and create without fear. The empire that had spent 10,000 years conquering began to discover the benefits of partnership. Keitha had become an ambassador. He traveled between hegemony space and human territory, helping to build bridges between two civilizations that had nearly gone to war. It was difficult work. Suspicion ran deep on both sides. But progress was being made. Today he was meeting with Ambassador Chen one final time. She had announced her retirement after 50 years of diplomatic service. She was ready to rest. They met in a garden on a human station near the border. The station floated in the darkness between stars, invisible to anyone who did not know where to look. Plants from 100 worlds grew in carefully maintained environments. Water flowed through artificial streams. Birds from Earth sang in the branches of trees that had never known natural sunlight. Chen looked older than when they had first met. Her movements were slower. Her hair had gone completely white, but her eyes still held the same sharp intelligence. You look well, she told him. The diplomatic life agrees with you better than the military life, Kathrava admitted. I spent 40 years preparing for wars. Now I spend my time preventing them. It is more satisfying. They walked slowly through the garden. Clear's throat around them. The station hummed with quiet activity. Humans and aliens moved past on various errands. No one paid special attention to the old ambassador and her visitor. I have a question I have wanted to ask for 3 years, Kathrova said. May I? Of course. Why did humanity not simply conquer us? You had the power. You still have the power. You could rule the galaxy 100 times over. Instead, you hide in your silent zone and wait for others to come to you. Why? Chen was quiet for a long moment. They walked past a grove of trees that released a sweet fragrance into the recycled air. Because snorts. We tried that, she said finally, on our own world with our own people. Empire after empire, conqueror after conqueror. We spent thousands of years believing that power meant dominion over others. She stopped beside a small pond. Fish from Earth swam in the clear water. Their scales caught the artificial light and sparkled like jewels, we learned that conquest brings only more war. Every empire we built eventually fell. Every victory planted the seeds of the next defeat. Our greatest leaders died, knowing that everything they built would crumble after they were gone. She turned to face him. Then we developed weapons that could destroy our entire world. For the first time in our history, we faced a simple choice: learn to stop fighting or die. There was no middle ground, no compromise. We either evolved beyond our violent nature or we ended as a species. And you evolved. We evolved not because we are better than other species, not because we are wiser or more peaceful by nature. We evolved because we had no other choice. The alternative was extinction. Chen began walking again. Keitha followed. When we reached the stars and found the galaxy full of hunter species, we recognized the pattern. These were civilizations that had never faced our choice. They developed space travel before they developed weapons of total destruction. They carried their violence to the stars without ever confronting its consequences. So we hid, and we watched, and we hoped that eventually other species would learn what we learned. Some did, some did not. Those that did not eventually destroy themselves. We watched that happen too. They reached a viewing platform at the edge of the garden. Through transparent walls they could see the stars stretching into infinity. Somewhere out there, the hegemony continued its transformation. Somewhere out there, other species were making their own choices. The hegemony is changing, Keitha said slowly, but changing. Our subject species are becoming partners. Our military is becoming defensive. Our economy is becoming sustainable. I know we have watched with great interest, but what happens to species that refuse to change? The ones that keep fighting no matter what. Chen's expression grew heavy. It was the look of someone who had seen too much over too many years. They destroy themselves eventually. Every single time. Hunter species cannot sustain themselves forever. They consume everything in their path until there is nothing left to consume. Then they turn on each other. Then they die. She looked at him directly. We do not force evolution on anyone. We cannot make species grow up if they refuse to learn. All we can do is protect ourselves and offer opportunities to those who are ready to accept them, and wait and wait. We are very patient, Admiral. We have been waiting for 300 years. We will wait for 300 more if we must. Eventually the violent species will burn themselves out. The ones that survive will be the ones that learn to stop, and someday the galaxy will be filled with civilizations that choose cooperation over conquest. She smiled slightly. That is the future we are working toward, not an empire of humanity ruling over lesser species, a community of equals, each having learned in their own way that violence is not the answer. Kaithroba thought about everything he had seen and learned over the past 3 years. The transformation of his own civilization, the slow building of trust between former enemies, the difficult work of creating something new from the ruins of something old. It will take a long time, he said. Yes, many generations, perhaps thousands of years. But we have time, and every species that learns, every civilization that chooses peace brings us one step closer. She turned to head back toward the station interior. That is why no ship ever came back from human space, Admiral. Not because we destroyed them, because we showed them something that changed everything they believed, and once you see what we have seen, once you understand what we understand, you cannot go back to the old ways. She paused and looked at him one final time. You have been changed too, I can see it. And you, the warrior who entered our space 3 years ago, is not the same being who stands here now. Kethrava nodded. Slowly, she was right. He had been changed. He had seen the possibility of a different future, a future where strength meant protection instead of conquest, where power meant the ability to choose mercy instead of violence. He could never go back to what he had been before. Thank you, he said, for everything, for sparing my fleet, for explaining instead of destroying, for giving us a chance to become something better. Chen reached out and touched his arm gently, a human gesture of connection. Thank yourself, Admiral. We offered the chance. You chose to take it. That is what makes all the difference. She walked away into the garden, disappearing among the alien trees. Cathra remained on the viewing platform for a long time. He watched the stars drift slowly past. Somewhere out there, his people were changing. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was slowly transforming. It would take time, many generations, perhaps thousands of years, but the journey had begun, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Valoran people were walking toward the light instead of spreading darkness. That was what happened when you entered human space. You found something that changed you forever, and you understood why no ship ever came back the same.